Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and it's time for the 15K Q&A video. I received about 250 questions. We're in the Johto era now, but unfortunately I can't answer all of them, so I had to cut it down a bit. So apologies in advance if I don't answer your question. I'm going to try to do my best to answer the selected ones that we have here, and I'm going to go ahead and get started with, by far, the most frequently asked question. I think at least like 20 or 30 people ask me this in some form or another. What's your take on the recent price increase? Is Pokemon in a bubble? This isn't really a yes or no question. I can't fill in the Scantron for it. It's hard to fill in the bubble to answer the bubble question. There's your dad joke 1 minute in. I think a good starting point for this is it's not just Pokemon. Sports is experiencing something similar. In fact, eBay put out that top 10 entertainment items right now. Pokemon cards are number 8 with a 90% growth. Puzzles were number 1 with like 1,000% growth. Maybe Pokemon puzzles 1,090%, but it's not exclusive to Pokemon. Also, these are niche markets. Majority of the world is not collecting Pokemon cards. Majority of the world is not collecting sports cards. If we look at the largest category of investing, like classical investing, stocks, bonds, things like that, that's estimated to be about 55% of the US, which is why those companies are always doing outreach to try and grab more of that market share. Point being, niche markets are significantly smaller than that largest pool of classical investing. Therefore, whenever you have a 1% or 2% increase in something like a niche market like collectibles, that can have a significant reaction. Keep in mind, some of these cards with certain grades, 100-ish copies, that's not a lot. That is very limited, especially when you contrast that with things like stocks, where companies are giving out thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000, millions of shares. You can't just start creating millions of master key shares and things like that. So therefore, you're dealing with a limited pool. So anytime you have even a 1% growth rate, that can have a meteoric rise or reaction on certain items. And if you want my candid full answer, I think it's reminiscent of 2016. I know everybody wants to predict the future. In 2016, you had a similar situation where you had people come in from Pokemon Go, and what happened then is you had this previous supply before the Pokemon Go entry, and then once the Pokemon Go reentry happened, naturally that increased prices. And because of that increase, people are like, wait, I bought that card like a fifth of the price it's going for now. It motivates some people to put more supply out there. You start to see an overall retrace, and then it hit an inflection point, and then it continued to climb to where we are today. So people want to know, do you think this stuff's going to come back down? Sure, there's going to be some retraces. The pro tip I can give you is any alarmist out there, anyone saying that they know, they don't. Literally nobody knows. Warren Buffett doesn't know. I don't know. Bill Gates doesn't know. Nobody knows. This is also isn't my first trip to the rodeo. I was here before 2008 recession. I was here after the 2008 crash. And I was here in 2016. I was here through all of it. All I can tell you is that cyclical pattern does happen. On an uptick, it usually moves upwards, and then you have somewhat of retrace and it settles at a new price. Some cards keep going up, some retrace harder, some, are kind of boring and they sit there in the middle. This is something that always happens in all markets all the time. One other point to consider is money is in the market, more money is in the market, therefore inflection points will naturally occur. So what is an inflection point? When I got into Magic a couple years ago, I could have done it, 15 years ago, and I chose not to. Therefore, I entered a point where some of these cards I could have bought at $100 are now $1,000. So therefore, my cost is $1,000 per card, whatever card I'm buying. And let's say it goes down to $750. There's no real incentive for me to sell at $750 unless I absolutely need to. So eventually you hit an inflection point because people who came in, this new money in the market, probably isn't going to sell and take a significant loss if they don't have to. So that's usually the macro trend. We've seen it before. It is pretty cyclical. But of course, again, nobody can tell you which cards are going to retrace, which cards won't retrace, which cards will be in the middle. No one can really say, but just be ready to adapt for anything that comes. So there you go. Hopefully that's a good overview on the 30 or so questions I got on the whole bubble in price increase situation. Next up, hey Scott, congrats on the milestone. Has the recent market volatility made you more or less active as a buyer? Are you shying away from purchases? Any of your usual chase cards? That's a good question, and the answer is I've spent more, not only this year, but in the past 3 years and the previous 10. I'm always buying throughout. To give you some examples, some of the cards I sold for hundreds of dollars back in the day, I'm now buying for thousands of dollars. It's just you move with the market. You adapt with, what's going on. The answers are in the data. The answers are in the analytics and how willing you are to not only analyze that, but take a risk with the data you have. That's ultimately all you can do as a human. Whether it's stocks, collectibles, whatever it is, all you could do is look at the data that's available and then make an educated guess on that strategic risk. And yeah, I'll be buying no matter what is going on. The worst recession ever, the biggest bull market ever, I'm going to be buying no matter what. Next up, which 6 Pokemon cards do you bring with you when you face Elite Four? Oh, that's a good question. Mewtwo, Blastoise for sure. The 3 starters: Charizard, Venusaur, Blastoise, Mewtwo, Mew, that I got from Toys R Us, gotta let you know. And then the 6th one would rotate sometimes between Gyarados, Dragonite. I had this Mewtwo glitch thing that I did back in the day. Like, it was like a Pikachu avatar, because I don't know what happened. I ended up with like a bonus Mewtwo somehow, but it was a Pikachu in the game. So that guy would be one of the rotating 6. So yeah, it was usually the 3 starters: Mewtwo, Mew, and then those other 3 guys rotating. PFM says, what do you plan on doing after you retire? Have you put much thought on which Scott you will pass the alpha on to? Thanks, Beta Scott. Honestly, to give you a real answer, like, wishful thinking, 10 years from now I'll be retired. And when I say that, what I mean is that if I don't ever want to work again and do anything at all and not do any investing, just let it ride, that would be very feasible. I don't think anything beyond that. I'm not someone who has like a 10-point plan. I'm someone who just tries to put energy into a general goal, and hopefully it does well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know who I'm passing on to. Probably future Scott, which also will be more alpha than you. But Way Too Slow Bro says, how does one ascend to the level of intellect to comprehend D+ posts? This is like one Discord inside the E4 thing after another. In all seriousness, do you have any card displays that you use? Do you have any recommendation on design? Are you worried cabinets with lights will damage slabs or sealed product? Honestly, outside the stuff you see here, you can't see some off camera. Like, I have one of these guys up over here next to Sonic and Tails. I have some sports stuff over there, some memorabilia you can't see off camera. I'm not too worried about it. As most people know, I don't keep my most valuable stuff or anything significantly valuable where I do these videos. And I rotate stuff just whimsically. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this up or I'm going to take that down. I'm not really too worried about it. I'm definitely not the person to ask for, like, what's the long-term, like, damage on museum glass done? I have no idea. But yeah, I'm pretty chill about it. I don't worry too much. And again, I don't put like super valuable stuff all over. Pokemon Raider asks, what's up, Raider? It's like the E4 Q&A right here. When will you open up a first edition base pack? Dude, I've thought about this for like 5 years now. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it this time. All right, I'm gonna do it this year. Each time I chicken out because the price just keeps increasing and you can't really locate them that much. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know when it's gonna happen. I thought maybe 25th anniversary, but I'm sure by then I'm just gonna be like, nah, I'm only waiting for 30th anniversary. So yeah, we'll see. Ray says, what are your thoughts on the extra Battle Day full art trainers, Lily Guzma? Actually, this is a Patreon question that I've gotten multiple times. So for those who don't know, I do Q&As every month on Patreon, and multiple people ask me about this. And what I said there is that, typically what I do with cards like this that are a mix of collectability and playability, I wait for the playability element to completely phase out. That way I know for sure what people are doing is probably out of interest, collecting, sentimental, rather than like a, practical playability. So that's my take on them, is I just wait for stuff like that to have no playability aspect, and then I start to consider it, because at that point I'm like, okay, people are probably just buying this to collect. Pokenastic, this is straight E4 the whole way. What are your thoughts on WB creator cards? Seems like an interesting release that doesn't get much attention. Yeah, that's true. So WB creator cards are like low-key Art Academy. They're literally a design contest. I think why it flies under the radar is because it was one of the rare English exclusive releases, which people don't expect because it is very, very rare. And also, it was at the low point of the hobby. That was like definitely the low point. I would say tail end of WotC, early EX, for sure the low point. And that's when those came out. So I think they just fly under the radar. But yeah, I agree. They have more to them, I think, that the market appreciates. There's a Pikachu in there as well. And they have a nice, little story or origin, just like Art Academy. Very similar. Next up, hey Scott, congrats on 15K. What is your Bigfoot or unicorn in the hobby? Okay, meaning something you've only heard rumors about or is so rare, obscure. Example, owning an actual Pokemon B777 airliner. Also, hockey question, what position do you play? Dangles, slappers, lefty, righty, cage, visor, open. What are your plus minus? I'm left wing, dangles, righty, visor. Let's hear it. Actually, I think I'm the same. Righty, yes. Visor, yes. Dangles, yes. and left wing typically. Yeah, I'm the exact same. Dude, my hands are like by far my biggest asset in the game. Like, if any of the guys from hockey are watching this, like, they'll always joke and be like, Scotty, how many hours a day do you practice downstairs in your basement, stick handling? But that's definitely my biggest asset. If only my skates and my shot were all in that same level, then I might be doing something productive with hockey. But yeah, that's my player profile. It's pretty much the same as yours. As for something, a unicorn, maybe those really obscure trophies, like with the face on them. I remember there was a kid who was on a Japanese show, and he had one that was like holographic that caught us all by surprise. No one knew about it for like 20 years. So maybe something like that, some one-off, like obscure trophy that, we don't really know much about. Antonio says, does it make sense to buy The Millionaire Next Door if I live in Italy? Do the things it says translate to every lifestyle, or just America? Are you into air cards? So you should make a video on them, on the ones you have, support from Italy. Yeah, as for Millionaire Next Door, I think it's applicable to everybody. I definitely agree that Italy's economy or economic situation has more gravity. It's more difficult to create wealth than in the U.S. My cousin, for example, who was previously in Milan, now moved back to Varese, and she's lucky and her husband's lucky because they have like opportunity. They have jobs. But, like when I talk to them, they're like, yeah, we're going to be working deep into our 70s because like the crazy previous generations like have all that social guaranteed social payment, like that extent. It's so overreaching and it's just draining. So yeah, we don't have that type of stuff in the US, and taxes are different. A lot of stuff is different, and you can grow businesses more. But in general, the takeaway points of like, price is what you pay, value is what you get. A lot of that stuff is still applicable, but I do agree it's going to be harder, to apply it as successfully as you would in the US. Next up, what is your top three favorite? Oh, Kevin Quador. There we go. Another E4 member. What's up, Quador? What is your top three favorites full art trainer cards released this far, and what did you or will you eat for lunch today? So usually, because I'm a night owl, I wake up late. Lunch is usually just a snack. Like breakfast is late. So today what I did was muesli and some like pretzels and peanut butter, went for my run, and just had Mexican tonight. We're doing this in the evening. So that's a normal day. Usually I'm not eating too much, trying to get some type of exercise in, not just physically, but I think it's good, like meditation. Anyway, as for the full art trainer thing, that's tough. That's real tough. Man, that's a good question. Okay, if the 20th anniversary counts, those are going to be my top two by far, if that counts. And then for support trainers, like meme, I think a meme answer would be Wiki, Cynthia, Guzma. If that's what you're talking about, all those come to mind. That's tough. But if I could choose, definitely the top two would be that Team Rocket 20th anniversary. Next up, Marcus says, not sure if this has been asked, but my question is, how much impact do you think YouTubers have on the Pokemon TCG market, as in promoting certain sets and hype around certain cards? They definitely have influence, but I think in general people overestimate it. I think people truly do not understand how large markets are. Even even going back to niche markets and saying, okay, niche markets are not the totality of the world. That could still be a lot of people. 1% of a billion is 10 million. I always say that for like people who talk about economics in China and things like that. It's like when you have a pool of like a billion people, 1% that is 10 million. That's still a good amount of people transacting. So at the end of the day, the market is so large that, YouTubers can influence certain things. Ultimately, I think they're just exposure for the hobby, and you do what you want with that. You make your choices with that information. I try to do the best to be as informative as possible. No one's perfect, but I try to just throw as much information out there, and people can do what they want with that. It's up to them. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think they definitely have, influence, and they definitely create exposure for the hobby, but there's no way to quantify what it is. I would say in general, though, I think people significantly overestimate it, like significantly. When I hear people like, oh, smpratte made this video, I'm like, man, you guys are like my biggest fans, because I don't even believe myself that much. So yeah, I would say they definitely have influence, but people overshoot it big time. Next up, what do you think about Koro cards? Yeah, they're good. I mean, they're like pretty much everything you want. They have history, golden era, Japanese promos, unique art. They're affordable, ungraded. If you want the PSA 10 option, they are difficult to grade. You're going to pay a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, I think they really cover everything. Next up, Don Green says, are you concerned that very well crafted proxies will become too similar to distinguish from the originals? Not in person. I think that for novice collectors or new collectors, for sure. I've seen it before. It's going to happen. I think some of those cards on eBay are harder to make out because the image can hide, the hollow pattern, the surface. You can't feel it. But every single proxy I've ever felt is like basically like a glossy business card. It just doesn't have the right feel to it. But yeah, I definitely think it's fooling some people, especially new collectors. It's unfortunate. I wish it could just be wiped out. If Pokemon cared, they could eliminate it. But it's just too, small beans for them. They're not going to mess with it. But yeah, I don't see it as a huge risk. I see it as a micro trend, like not a macro trend. But again, in person, I don't think it's as convincing. Andrea says, do you see the WotC cards in Pokemon becoming what the alpha and beta sets are for Magic? Thanks for the content, is amazing. Andrea from Italy. Like half of this has been like E4 in Italy so far. As for your question, I remember doing a video back in the day, a generic comparison between first edition base, alpha, shadowless, beta, unlimited, unlimited. And if you want to go deeper, you could do like, base 2, fourth, or revised, or legendary, those are general analogies, and I think in general they are similar, but the difference with alpha and beta is the rarity. Alpha has 1,100 rares, beta has like 3,200. That's significantly less, especially alpha is significantly less, even than first edition base. First edition base pop report is by far the most comprehensive out of any set ever in Pokemon. That will never change. I mean, you have 20 years of people consistently submitting those cards. Therefore, you get a very accurate data pool on what you can expect and how many are out there. It's always been estimated somewhere around 10,000, give or take, maybe 7,500 hollows. Nobody knows for sure. Unfortunately, they didn't give us the numbers like they did with the early Magic sets. But yeah, I think the biggest differential is alpha and beta have less quantity. But when you get into the other stuff, what's interesting is like it starts out like that with Magic and then it really upticks. Like after Fallen Empires and all that, even like the Dark, which is considered 4 Horsemen or whatever, after that, it really has an uptick. Where with Pokemon, you see more of a downtick, especially because it wasn't as popular. So it's an interesting setup there. But yeah, I think that's the general takeaway, is that they are similar, but alpha and beta are rare. Jacob says, do you dip your pizza in ranch? Hard no. Ranch and pizza are not even in the same room when it's happening. Hot sauce, though, different story. Fexspore says, hey, Scott, it is me. Fexspore from E4 Discord, longtime member of E4. As for my question, what do you get when you go to Chipotle? What I get is Qdoba. I don't do Chipotle typically. It's usually Qdoba. John says, what part of STL do you hail from? Let's go Blues. So I grew up in that place that everyone pretended they cared about for a couple months, Ferguson. And then moved around like when I went to school and college, hopped over the state border. But yeah, I'm always going to be a longtime Blues fan. I remember watching, the first game I remember was like we beat Ottawa Senators like 11-1, like 93 or something, 94. And from like then moving forward, I was like, God, Ottawa is just terrible. But it's still true today, I guess. But yeah, I've just been a huge fan basically since like 90, 93, 94. Jason says, hey Scott, I'm from the UK, and aside from Pokemon, I also collect football, soccer cards. During a recent trip to a supermarket, I put some packs down to check out when the man behind the till began mocking me. He asked if I'd been a good boy today. He then said he thinks I need to see a doctor if I like trading cards. His closing line was to tell me to stop buying football cards and grow up. Have you experienced someone belittling, humiliating you in such a way or actively discourage you from doing what you love? All right, this was a tough one to read, man. I'm sorry that happened to you, Jason. Yeah, I've received this since I started. I get something almost every day now of some like just absolutely like unhappy stranger on the internet projecting their unhappiness onto me. I mean, it's unfortunate, and I'm not surprised, a grown man working a remedial job is projecting their unhappiness onto you. All I could tell you is I've sold cards to every single country in the world. I've sold cards to some of the biggest names in YouTube, celebrities, you name it. Everybody does this. It's not just like the stereotype, while that stereotype might have some truth to it of like, that I don't even know what the stereotype is anymore, but like what people think is a nerd or whatever. I mean, friggin' David Beckham plays with Legos to chill out. The guys from South Park will buy Lego sets after they're done doing their crazy crunch of like a month or 2 months, of constantly writing, they'll just put to their Legos to chill out. Like those are real stories. These are grown ass adults. So yeah, I think this just says more about them. I'm at a point now in my life, and what I would tell people who face this type of stuff is I don't have enough time to do the things that make me money. So I don't have a second to waste on any of this crap. If somebody wants to be negative and whine about whatever, that's entirely their unhappiness, and they could do whatever they want with their unhappiness. Don't ever let it become your own. Just keep that there. Again, from someone who doesn't have enough time to even do the things they enjoy and the things that make them money, I have zero time for things that don't make me money and they're super negative like this. So I've been dealing with it for over a decade. To me, now it's just like they're just talking to themselves. Just don't ever let someone else's unhappiness be your own. Money Bucket says, hey Scott, how many PSA 10 first edition Abras do you have? Do you think Abra has the best artwork for base set? I don't know, Muddy. I don't know anymore. Actually, these guys were sitting next to Abra. I had to go get them from storage, but Abra's art's pretty solid. I can't lie. It's definitely one of the better, more robust arts in base set. Tab Lab says, how many Bitcoins do you have? 0. I hold 0 crypto. I have plenty of speculative assets that are better than crypto, so I just don't have time for it. Sean B says, why do you think first edition base is still so low to buy PSA 10 commons? Need to be quiet, Sean B. You're onto something. I think you're hitting on a value that's there. They have increased in the past few years. That's something I'm always buying constantly. I would say almost every month or every other month I'm buying some type of first edition base. But yeah, I usually hold a lot of them because I don't see the value in selling them at current market. Now, some of them have increased. I have put a couple out there here and there, but overall, I still think the value and what you get from them and how historic they are isn't fully appreciated yet by the price. And that's just my opinion. And yeah, I do think they're a great value option. David says, I see BGS Black Label cards going for insane amounts of money, but do they sell? And what do you think the risk reward of not getting the Black Label and the value being far less from the card? PSA 10 seems higher value than almost all their BGS labels. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things people miss with the whole Black Label thing. I did a video on it. Ultimately, Black Labels are niche, and that's what I was trying to explain, is that it's definitely not a standard. There might be certain people who want that certain card with the highest possible grade. Overall, though, PSA 10 is 99% of the market. If you put a Black Label on a lot of just average cards, it's really not going to do anything. The moniker at the end of the day is PSA 10 Charizard, PSA 10 blank. Now, I'm not denying that certain cards like first edition base holos definitely have a market for Beckett grading. Overall, though, the Black Label, for me, it's just too minuscule of a differential for me to pay that exorbitant of a premium. That's just me, and I think that's where a lot of people sit. The financial term is cost of capital. The cost of capital is just not there. The amount of money I have to pay for that minuscule difference in quality. And sometimes you're talking a negligible, little bit of difference centering, super negligible difference. For me, it's not worth it. If you're that guy, more power to you. But for me, I'd rather just go and get something with unique art, a unique release. Again, that cost of capital issue, I think, is the fence that keeps it, where it is. Banana says, hey, Scott, what kind of market effect do you think the permanent closure of PSA would have on Pokemon? Oh, that's interesting. With an immediate drop to 0 in new supply, it could cause snippet prices to increase for PSA grade cards. How do you think this would affect Beckett or other grading companies being the norm for Pokemon afterwards? Any new collector wouldn't be able to slab their own cards with PSA. They'd have to already buy graded cards, or they could elect to grade their cards through the different companies. That would require a ton of ungraded cards, completely grade 10 set. Keen for your 2 cents on the random hypothetical love your content from Pratt's Taco Emporium. And I realized I had some shares in Rudy's Taco Emporium. But yeah, that's an interesting take. I think one of the reasons that we experienced such an uptick recently is because PSA was closed temporarily. And, even though they are open, to get those cards through PSA, with their million card backlog is going to take some time. It's not going to be all at once. It's going to be gradual. So we are experiencing that in a way, a little microcosm of that. If they went away, that would be interesting because they do have the market inertia. It's just so hard to fathom how they would go away. I think that's the hardest part for me to get past. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what would happen. I think eventually people would go in another direction. I just don't know how quickly that would happen, because for the longest time, it's been PSA and Pokemon, for the longest time, for 20 years. And yeah, I mean, there's other options out there, but no one has the longevity, consistency, inertia, And just while PSA has plenty of things they need to fix, you know, they're still well head and shoulders above even Beckett, as far as like, you know, being strict or whatever you want to say. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good hypothetical. I would say we kind of experienced a little microcosm here when they were temporarily closed, but of course that's because people knew they were going to open again. But yeah, you did see an uptick on certain cards. But yeah, that's a good question. Hopefully that addresses it to some degree. Guy says, do you think that Magic and Pokemon have two different types of collectors, investors? I personally believe that since Magic has been around longer, and the people who invest in that are slightly more experienced and mature and knowledgeable in the big picture, not trying to take away from the fact that there aren't trolls and Pokemon also is a good, smart collectors as well. Or do the differences in investing in the two cards have nothing in common because they're two different collectibles? That's a good question. I think this actually puts into focus how markets aren't just one buyer or one thing. And I think a lot of people miss that. You know, when people talk about, oh, people buy cards because of this reason, that might be a strong trend, but it's not one. There's no one perspective outside of maybe like people just like them. And all I could say is, you know, from my own experience, I'm a cross collector into Magic. You know, I started about a few years ago. I didn't start when I started Pokemon, and what interests me in Magic is just the art, history, rarity elements, which is identical to Pokemon, and I think that's like the universal path there for all collectibles. You know, like rarity, history, artwork. I think that's true for pretty much any collectible. So yeah, you have a lot of people walking that path, and they might stop off at Pokemon, Magic, sports, whatever it is, and I think that's going to continue. But yeah, there's definitely differences. I agree that the average age is older in Magic. That doesn't mean they're perfect humans, but I think what it does mean, probability is on the side that these people have experienced more life. They understand, you know, the cost of doing things, the cost of running a business, you know, what a mortgage is like for 10 years compounded and things like that. Because they have more life experience under their belt, you see less of like the projection maybe that you see in Pokemon, especially right now. But overall, I think there's going to be more of it. We've had a nice group of cross collectors come in, at least on E4 from Magic, and it's been a breath of fresh air because these guys, you know, have been doing Magic for a long time. They're very optimized and used to how markets work, and yeah, it is nice to see people jumping over the fence. But yeah, I think it's something that you'll definitely see more cross collectors going both ways. Next up, what's your favorite Pokemon? It's hard to pin down one. People know it's usually Mewtwo and Blastoise because those are the Pokemon that like saved my life in the early games. I know Psychic was like OPAF. I remember playing like Pokemon Stadium and down to Mewtwo, and he would just like destroy like the whole block. Like Mewtwo would just, you could have like all three of their Pokemon and just Mewtwo, and I would still be fine because he was just a beast. So yeah, Mewtwo and Blastoise are probably my go-to. Fire Blast Splitter says, hello, I run a trustworthy Pokemon business page on Instagram, and I will be holding a raffle. Okay. I'm interested in using one of your cards, the 1999 Tropical Wind. Would you be willing to let me use a picture with a timestamp? Is this a meme from the person on eBay who actually messaged me this? And we could split the profits 80-20. This would be in addition to paying full price for your item once spots fill up. Also curious to see if you have the same card, but with a 4 XXX. Oh my god. Oh my gosh. Those are more desirable and will raffle faster at a higher price. This is a well-oiled... This is like 3 memes in one. Good job. Surf Snow says, what shouldn't I buy? It's a good take on the what should I buy. Maybe energy cards? I don't know at this point. Yeah, maybe energy is my answer. Getting away from the Discord memes, which card was the worst design in your opinion? That's hard. That's really hard to say. I appreciate art, so it's hard for me to say, like, you know, it's even hard for me to say what's my absolute favorite artwork. Like, this one is a go-to answer for me for my favorite or one of my favorites. I wish I could, like, blue Skidoo into this thing or, like, Mario 64 into this card. It's just, it's peak art, but I don't know. That's really hard. That's really hard. Like, maybe some, like, forgettable, like, Diamond and Pearl cards. Like, that was kind of a lackluster time. Crimson Invasion. I don't know, man. I'm going to some of the least popular sets because I really don't know. Maybe some of those like Emerging Powers cards. Emerging Powers is just like bottom 5 for sure. So yeah, something from Emerging Powers. Rattle, we're not done with the Discord memes. Rattle says, will PFM ever own a PSA 9 T17? Number 2, and notice that the price of everything PFM doesn't own increased drastically. Should I only invest in the cards that he needs to complete his collection and list when way above market? Oh my god. I think PFM is going to own a T17 eventually. He's just taking his time. He's a patient collector. Oh man, that's good. Jared says, hey Scott, why does the Instagram community cry so much? I have no idea. I don't pay attention, man. I'm barely on Instagram. It's a lot, again, when that guy earlier who was talking about when he checked out with the cards and the guy at the till was making fun of him, don't ever let someone else's unhappiness become your own. I mean, those people are just unhappy, projecting. You know, I've had crazy conspiracy theories, like the things people think I do or whatever. It's unbelievable. It's not worth a second in your life. Life's too short. Next up, due to Pokemon not printing enough modern product for demand and businesses buying it all up, this means players cannot get a hold of the new hot item cheap and whatever they want. With that being said, what is a scalper? These start out so serious, and then the end is just another Discord meme. So, in relation to this context, what they're talking about are the recent, I think it's like Pika-ROM decks that came out that are pretty solid options for anyone who bought them or any business out there. What the takeaway from this, to be serious, is that businesses always have to strategize. So if we go back to like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was easier to acquire cards and harder to sell them. Today, it's the opposite. Acquisition is much more difficult and selling is much easier. And yeah, sure, you could buy most cards, but what I'm saying is like the profit margin there needs to be viable for businesses. And especially when we deal with modern product, not everything is hidden fates. You know, Crimson Invasion exists. Crimson Invasion almost put people out of business. That's not an exaggeration. People to this day struggle to sell Crimson Invasion for $50 a box at local events. They're just trying to dump it because it's an awful set. It's like Emerging Powers. So therefore, when you do get something like Pika-ROM, Hidden Fates, you got to make the most of it as a business because it's got to take care of those losses. You know, a lot of people always talk about the wins. They don't talk about the losses. Rudy says that all the time. There are so many variables that come into it when you have a business. You have constant overhead. I mean, you have people like Rusty, TCA Gaming, A+ student, the most qualified to open up a brick and mortar store, and he couldn't make it work because it's so difficult because the margins are so razor thin. So, therefore, to give that a serious answer, businesses have to optimize as much as they can with the product they get, and that means when you get something that's good, you have to try and like stretch that out as long as possible because it's going to take care of the loser sets that are going to follow inevitably. So yeah, there's a more serious answer to the Discord meme. Michael Rogers says, how much product are you letting sit for a while compared to how much you have listed for sale right now? Good question. This actually segues or piggybacks off of what I just said about strategy or acquisition being more difficult. Because acquisition is more difficult today and selling is easier, the most valuable aspect today is strategy. It's not about the cards anymore. You know, acquisition for things like, you know, your rare stuff is much more difficult than what it used to be. And again, selling it is much easier. If I can acquire any booster box 3 months ago, selling it today is like a breeze, right? So strategy is really the most valuable aspect today, more than ever. And that's because the market is moving so fast and it's so much larger than what it used to be. So therefore, I have like these items, for example. I don't know if you could see, but most of these are silver PSA stickers. Some of them are none. Those are the newer ones. I mean, I have stuff in storage ranging like 5 years, 10 years. I have stuff that I've been holding for a long, very long time. Even some of these cards, very long time. So you have a variety of strategy. And again, tying back into that other point about businesses, this is how you survive and thrive in hobbies. Your next purchase is not guaranteed. It's very feast or famine. So therefore, you can't just dump everything the same way. I shouldn't be selling my top items the same way I'm selling my like modern new product that I can still buy from a distributor. You have to figure out, you know, what stuff should I sell quickly? What stuff should I hold a bit? You have to figure out what to do. And again, strategy is the biggest element. It's the most valuable element moving forward. So yeah, it's a variety. Everything I look at and I say to myself, you know, what at this point for the big stuff, I'm like, what would it be worth for me to sell? That's the biggest question I ask. And usually it's not enough, so I just keep holding it. Scyther says, is going to Worlds really worth it? As someone who has never been to a major Pokemon event, what can I expect if I go? Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. Worlds is an experience every collector should have. It's basically reminiscent of like the 90s, like when you could hang out and talk with other collectors. I don't know if you guys or whoever asked me went to like Toys R Us or did those meetups back then. It's just a way to meet other collectors, other people in the game. I mean, if you want like a practical breakdown, I guess you network is a word we could use to talk about it. But ultimately, it's just really fun. It's a great way to meet people. I think it like rejuvenates your collecting spirit, as corny as that sounds, as hallmark as that sounds. But I think it does like give you more motivation, makes you more excited. Because when you put faces to it, like we're always talking to usernames and we're like assuming the person, we're assuming what they mean, and we're making a lot of assumptions. And you really see like you really feel the human element and like how most people in this hobby just like the cards. And again, we come from all over. You know, tying back in that guy who was criticized at the store, you'll see every type of person now at these events, every age, everything, every gender, race, I don't care, name it, they're there. In fact, like I think 50, you're like a fourth of the world now is represented at Worlds. Like 50 countries are now in each tournament competing. So yeah, it's a very unique experience you can't get anywhere else, and I'd recommend if it's in your area or if it's feasible for you, you should at least try it one time. Dave Rave says, when you buy high ticket items, are you using investors? Do you mean like, am I using investor money, like outside money? If so, then no. Everything I own is just me. I don't do partner deals. The only time I'll do a partner deal with like business partners I have are usually some contractual thing. And these are really exceptional. Like the biggest deals I've done have contracts involved. So that's probably the closest to that. But no, all the things that everything you see, you know, I buy myself. I'm not someone who likes to use other people's money. I like to do it myself. I don't even have any debt. I don't like any debt. I don't mess with loans. I know there's opportunity there. It's not my thing. But yeah, it's all just me. Mimbo says, what are your thoughts on Base Unlimited? If you were re-entering the hobby now with all the knowledge you have, would you go after several Base Unlimited highly graded cards, or would you go after a smaller number of Shadowless First Edition? I personally started with Unlimited because that's what I grew up with. I think a good idea to throw at you, maybe to hopefully help you out, is that kind of tying in what we talked about earlier, markets are comprised of numerous perspectives. So and they might contradict each other. So you'll have people that want to buy first edition Shadowless because they couldn't get it when they were younger. But then you have another camp that says, I want to get Unlimited because that's what I remember when I was younger. So you'll have this duality, and that might actually be the same person, you know? Just like in a day, you can be angry, happy, sad. You can have a range of feelings. And so in this hobby, even within one individual, you might have a range. So what I did is I started with Unlimited. I start with what I understood. My first online purchase, I don't think it's my first. Yeah, we'll say that. My first online purchase was the Southern Island binder. And because I wanted that so bad when I was younger. That was the thing. I was like, God, I remember that binder. I want that so bad. That was my first online purchase. So that's where I started. And then I started to complete like, hey, let me finish base set. I always wanted to get like, you know, the whole base set, like with Charizard, everybody. So I did that. And, you know, everybody's different. I don't think there's a perfect answer. I think if you're asking, you know, which one you should do to make money, older rare mint or better is like the, you know, general rubric that I can give you. But, you know, at the end of the day, for these, you should just buy what you enjoy, especially because if you look at the ungraded options, maybe outside of first edition base, but even Shadowless ungraded is still very affordable. Unlimited for sure is extremely affordable. So, I mean, you could do a little Porque no Los Dos if you want. But yeah, again, there's multiple perspectives on which to choose. Apine GG says, currently working 8 hours a day on reselling. Wow. Man, I remember that hustle. Buying up old collections from all over my country, going through people's attics and so on. I've done this for 2 years now and been collecting interesting things on the side that I could afford to pull out of my buys. My whole collection is raw. Question is, would it be better to get everything that I collected over my time to grade and sell, even though the grades won't hit 8 to 10? Most will probably be 4 to 7. Love your content and watch your videos as soon as they come out. Best regards, Benjamin. All right, Benny. First of all, I remember the grind. I remember what that was like. It's a different grind now. It's still a grind, but it's a different type of grind. But yeah, dude, I remember. I could feel this message reading it. what I can tell you is like what I tell people in Patreon when I do the monthly Q&As. So in Patreon, I do my monthly market recap where I talk about my sales, and I'll just print out pages of like what I sold this month on eBay, and I'll go through and say, okay, now we're getting into the lower grades, and I've done so many PSA 7s, even PSA 6. Like, I remember selling a PSA 6 Umbreon Japanese promo, not even like WotC, like PSA 6 Japanese stuff. Sure, it's not earning a ton. PSA 6 Koro cards multiple times, PSA 7 Koros, PSA 7 Anna Pikachu, Surfing Pikachu, even some of those vending cards. I mean, these lower grades are just another purchase option. That's all it is. It's just another option. So yeah, I've definitely been selling cards under 8 to 10. 8 to 10 is the general range, I think, for like a more ironclad guaranteed sale. But yeah, these lower grades are going to flesh out over time naturally. That's just what happens. And like I said, in what I mentioned with my sales in Patreon, I've already been experiencing 7s for sure. Like, I'm selling 7s very consistently, not even just this past month, like going back a year. I've been selling 7s for a while. So therefore, yeah, it's already happening, and I think it's a matter of time. That's really it. It's just a time game. You know, if we go back to when I started this YouTube, it was like PSA 10s only. Now that's like a meme because it's so funny, because it's so unrealistic. But yeah, now we're at a point where it's like, I know people who are trying to do just a PSA 6 first edition base set, you know, because that's like the affordable option. So yeah, it's just a time game. Next up, do you play Pokemon Go? If not, why not? Yes, I do. I'm actually going to do tomorrow I'm going to do the campaign with CDOT, and it should hopefully go well. I'm going to be cautious dodging people while I'm walking. But yeah, I've been playing Pokemon Go. I'm level 39. Actually, if you want, we could be friends. Unfortunately, I don't have enough gifts to give to people, and that's also a meme on E4 Discord, that I never have enough gifts to give people. So it's definitely a one-way relationship if you want to be friends on Pokemon Go, and I apologize in advance. I don't have enough gifts. I never have enough gifts. So anyway, yes, I do play. I think it's a great game. Bass says, what's your opinion on the PSA case? I think it's great. I really like the current model. I'm just not that picky. I think that's the thing. Overall, I just see the good in things, and with PSA, it's just like you're splitting hairs at the end of the day. Like, it's a great case. It's like the best option to protect a card, in my opinion. I'm sure we could sit here and nitpick about how one little thing could change, all that. I agree. There could be certain things to improve, but overall, yeah, I'm very happy with it. It's the best protection. It also, I think, does a great job at framing the card. I don't think that gets enough discussion. This is a great frame option. I mean, this is like perfect. You know, it really showcases the card, gives it protection, puts focus on it. I think like the added centering, anyone who doesn't know the hobby can read this. I've had temp employees who will type out what it says on here, and it's just fantastic. You know, they can just look at that and type it out. I'm like, great, you registered it. You don't even have to know the card. So yeah, I think the case is solid. You know, I don't really have any real issues. Berkshire, well, this is Warren Buffett in here asking questions. Berkshire says, your favorite Pokemon minus Snorlax. Are there any rare Snorlax cards worth buying? So as mentioned, my favorite Pokemon are Blastoise and Mewtwo. For rare Snorlax, that's a good question. I don't know. Like EX Snorlax, Rocket EX, Team Rocket Returns, the Domino Snorlax maybe, the Japanese Hungry, and Nintendo 64. There's really not a huge standout with Snorlax. Maybe I'm missing one. Oh yeah, of course. First edition Jungle. There it is. First edition Jungle PSA 10. I remember I sold one for $2,300. I think People's got an E4 the other day offering $2,900 for it. So there you go. The OG first edition Snorlax, when he was still more of a dark, like forest green, almost, you know, really dark color. Now he's lighter. If yours is Snorlax, you probably already knew that, but yeah, the Jungle one is definitely, especially high grade. Joel says, what do you think about cards signed by their artists and authenticated by PSA? Do you see the value of these cards increasing over time? Do you think the artists like Arita sign your card is worthy investment, or would you prefer to keep the card raw? Again, markets aren't one buyer. So in general, having it graded by PSA is a good thing. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Do they get right all the time? Absolutely not. They definitely have graded some suspect Sugimori signatures, and for Sugimori, it's at a point of provenance is more valuable than everything. I don't know if people caught that, but recently the Pichu, there's a signed Pichu illustration by Sugimori. It hit like $55,000. Sugimori is like the opposite end. He's like the trophy card of signatures. You know, I can speak for myself. The Sugimori autos that I own are 10 years old now. So I have provenance going all the way back. You know, I bought this stuff before, you know, any artists or anything was even a market. You know, anything signature was even happening. And of course, I have documentation. I have a public post of it, you know, going back. Other people don't have that, so it's harder to prove provenance, and a lot of people regurgitate what they think is the answer for Sugimori. But as for Rita, I mean, his is so affordable right now. Therefore, I would just go with the best option, which is authenticated. And if you want to always crack it out, you can always crack it out and be like, okay, you know, I know for sure if you just want it for your collection, you know that this was authenticated. If you want to put it in a binder, your choice. But again, the market isn't just one buyer. There are people who don't like autographs at all. There are people who do. There are people who don't want, some people want to do a binder of them. Entirely their preference. But I think the best like overall answer is yes. Having an added layer, while it may not be perfect, is still better. It's at least one other layer of something there. What's your favorite 2-gen Pokemon? Oh, that's a good question. Ho-Oh comes to mind because he's in the first episode. I think he's actually my favorite legendary bird is Ho-Oh. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Ho-Oh. Yeah, that's it. That's the answer for it. Trash U says, what's your biggest financial mistake you made in your life? Wow. That's a good question. Kind of caught me off guard. That's a really good question. So I'm not someone who lives in regret. I think it's unproductive. I mean, what are you gonna do at this point? It's over. So if I had to like answer this, maybe just not doing more of the same. Maybe I should have been more bullish with Pokemon cards back in the day. But even the first thought after that is that, you know, you don't want to own too much because you need to let the market do its thing and grow. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess in general, just buying a few more boxes here and there, buying a few more cards, just doing a little bit more of the same. But of course, hindsight's 2020. That's always the risk. That's the inherent risk is, you know, people talking about prices. I remember paying record prices at the time for a lot of these big items. And back then, everyone said the same thing they're saying now. So yeah, it's hard for me to pin down a regret because I try not to, I think it's unproductive. But yeah, that's a very good question. I would have to just say being just a little bit more bullish, you know, but again, hindsight's 2020. Casper says, do you see trading cards, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, like little pieces of art like me? Oh, absolutely. Like that's what it's all about. I mean, we're collecting limited art at the end of the day. You know, like I said, with this one, if I could blue skidoo into this, like this is just, man, I can't even look at this thing without getting like an emotional reaction. It's so good. It's like peak Sugimori. You got all the starters. Charmander's got the little spike on his back. Like this is original watercolor Sugimori cheese. Like this is it. And then like that, just the vibe of him like holding the Pokemon. It's like everything. It brings us back to what we remember when we were younger. This does it all. I mean, there's other cards out there. Like why I personally love things like trophy cards is because I think it's extremely analogous to art. You know, when you look at art collecting, like I typically just go for originals. That doesn't mean I'm buying like Picassos or anything, but that stuff is very limited. You know, there's only sometimes a handful of them, sometimes only one of them. You know, that's why some of them have such a high value. And that's similar to something like an Illustrator. That, you know, these items they're just peak everything. And that's, I just love it. And also I was raised, I think, with art, not only by my parents, my grandparents. I was lucky. They were members. My great aunt, I mean, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. Definitely wouldn't have gone to college without her. You know, I had a lot of good influence when I was younger, a lot. I not only had good parents, but I had a good extended family that really valued. I mean, we're going deep here for just a conversation about TCs as art, but to finish that thought, like, yeah, like I definitely had great influence from my elders that appreciate art. They take me to the art museum like once a month on average. So I grew up with an appreciation for it, which again is why it's hard for me to say like which one do I dislike, you know, or what is my favorite even, because I just do have a wide appreciation. So yeah, that's definitely what I see. That's also why I value like Magic too and all this stuff. Like I love Magic because to me it's like another take on that 90s. Like when I look at like Time Walk, my favorite Magic card, it's like peak 90s, man. It's like that, it looks like some Tool type thing going on, like Tool the band, like kind of a Salvador Dali-esque surrealism, not just the clock on the face, but it has like a surrealist vibe. Also, we're going full nerd here. You're getting like by far the most ridiculous answer for this question. Like the the constellation of Orion in the background, my favorite constellation. Like it just hits so much. And I think that one especially could be its own piece. Anyway, I could go on about this forever. I could just talk about art forever. But yeah, it's definitely the core of why. Nostalgia is one huge component. Art is by far the other biggest component. Amir says, why is base set 2 so underrated? It isn't. It's exactly where it belongs all the time. To give you a serious answer, base 2 is just, man, it's like, I was watching videos the other day. Someone on E4 posted these really cool old videos from like 90s, early 2000s. It was really cool to go down memory lane. And there was a store at the time who they just got base 2 in. And you should hear the guy talking. He's like, yeah, nobody's buying this because it's just a reprinted set. This is like right out of the gate in 2000, they're saying it. So that's how I've always looked at it. It's just a reprinted set. I am not big on it. And also, Base Unlimited is very affordable. And that's what we grew up with. I grew up with Base Unlimited. The 90s generation or whatever grew up with Base Unlimited. If I could still buy Base Unlimited Charizard at an affordable price, I don't have an incentive to go after the Base 2. That's just me, but I think that's like the general sentiment. So yeah, it's right where it belongs. But keep in mind, it's increased. It's nowhere near what it used to be. Like, so keep that in mind. But it's usually going to be, it makes sense if it stays under Unlimited because again, Unlimited is always available and it's still very affordable. Breaking Silver says, congrats on 15K. What are your thoughts on the Master Ball or Master Battle set promos? So this was another very frequent question I got in the Patreon Q&As, especially when it dropped. And my answer then now is that it's a very solid release, but it's not Rocket 20th Anniversary. I think a lot of people were hoping for a Rocket 20th Anniversary. That thing, Rocket 20th Anniversary is like S tier. That thing is just like God tier. And this one has similar attributes. I'd say it's like B to A tier. It's solid, but it's not. Man, Rocket 20th is like, oh my. Those cards, everything about it. It's such a strong identity. These are decent. Okay, a good way to break it down is I think they sit somewhere between Rocket 20th Anniversary and Pokemon Center releases. Like Pokemon Center box releases. So somewhere in between there is where like the cosplay boxes. I think they sit between those 2 points. But again, it's still solid. I mean, I'm glad Japan's doing this because you're not getting it from the English side. So yeah, it's still a solid release overall. I definitely bought numerous boxes. Gil says, hey Scott, will Scumbag Pratt return and give us more advice in the near future? Oh, people always want me to put the hat back on. To give you a real answer, I enjoy things too much to be that negative. And when I do this, it's usually satire. Like, I hope people don't take it that seriously. I'm doing it like tongue in cheek to have fun. And I don't want to do it too much there's already enough negativity out there. I don't want to add any more to it. And honestly, it's harder at this point because I don't really pay attention. I avoid anything negative again because I don't have time for all the stuff that makes me money. So there's no way I have time for that. But yeah, I've thought about it. Usually how it happens is Discord will be like, hey, talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. And eventually I'm like, fine. It's like some really impulsive thing when it does happen. But I don't know the next time it's going to happen. What's your biggest regret in the hobby? Wow. We went from like biggest mistake you made in your life to biggest regret. We're going full therapy here. I think, yeah, it's kind of the same to the other question. Like just more of, I should have bought more of what I was doing or done more of what I was doing at the time. I don't know. Maybe if we had to get really serious about it, maybe just like reacting impulsively to a moment instead of thinking it through. That's probably the biggest one. Because there's definitely some people or some arguments I might have had or disagreements I might have had that if I would have just like gone for my run or like thought about it for a little bit longer, it'd have been better. So maybe that's like, in general, that's what I can think of. But yeah, otherwise, as for cards and stuff, maybe just doing more of what I did. I'm sorry to give these therapy answers here, but like if we're talking like biggest regret, that's where I'm going. Next up, why do you think we've been able or unable to find any personal experiences or photos from the late 90s, early 2000s Pokemon events in Japan, such as the Tamamushi University Magikarp event? Good question. I think it's because they didn't have the foresight that these collectors would be so obsessive and passionate that we want every little detail. Back then, it was just like a little fun thing to do. And, they didn't think it would have this much appreciation. Now, with that said, we do have documentation for Kangaskhan There's a book on that. I need to do videos on all this stuff. I need to do each one of these in their own video. But we do have documentation for that, for the major tournaments, the big 3 major tournaments back in the day. But yeah, I don't know. I know there's like a thing that says this is how many Magikarps were estimated distribution, but we don't have like a full breakdown. Brandon Moore says, hey Scott, what are your 3 favorite Vending series cards? Wow. So Vending is one of those sets that I saw when I was a kid, so I'm nostalgia for it. And the number one that comes to mind is the Voltorb. Voltorb from Kamiya. I remember when I saw that thing, and I remember looking at it was like a coin card shop, and I'm like, what? I'm like, they can draw Pokemon like this? Like, Voltorb is always like that circle, and this guy's like this wavy thing. It's so whimsical, and like Electabuzz is in the background. I'm like, there's a Pokemon, another Pokemon in the background. Like, this is breaking all the rules. Like, that was like, that and Southern Island like blew me away. So Voltorb for sure. Pikachu, Uyama Pikachu, another strong one. I mean, honestly, again, it's harder for me to figure out cards I don't like. Vending is just a power set, in my opinion, for people who grew up during that era. So yeah, Voltorb, Uyama's Pikachu, maybe the Mewtwo with the little text on the hip. Those Imakuni cards. Man, yeah, the Imakuni stuff in there. There's so much in there. There's so much in there. Even the backs. Like, this is how deep it is. The back of the Vending 3 cards. Like, all right, I gotta stop. We're getting too excited. So yeah, it's hard for me just to name 3, but if I had to, Voltorb, Pikachu, maybe Mewtwo. Next up, Belt says, what's your favorite item to display behind you? Probably, so I have one of these guys off camera next to Sonic and Tails over here. I have actually, let me try to reach it without knocking anything over. This is my Lucky University Magikarp. I bought a collection from someone in Japan through middleman. This was in the bulk. Like, there was a wild University Magikarp in with the bulk. Like, when I say bulk, I mean, I opened up this thing and it's like, I think it was like a Masaki set was the main, like, draw. And I go through, I'm like, okay, let me just go through these to see if there's like any hollow cards or vending cards. I'm like, what? Yeah, this was in the bulk. So this is my Lucky Magikarp, my Lucky University Magikarp. It's a PSA 8. This one is the one that will save me forever. I always have it here to remind me to count your blessings. Like, this is it. So I even have a 10 of this card, and I would sell the 10 before I sold this guy. This one is just, yeah. So again, not sure if you guys want the full answer, but you're getting it. So there it is. That is probably like the thing I have sitting next to me all the time. Next up, what type of music do you listen to? It's actually, I get this like every time. So actually, this whole page is like just pure like personal therapy. I was going to go into music in college, and then I was like, wait, hang on, that's not unemployable enough. I need to do something more unemployable than that. So we're going to study philosophy instead. And music's one of those things I just naturally, it just works. Like, I've always just had a knack for it. I taught myself guitar, taught myself piano. Well, I guess I took lessons when I was younger, but majority of it was self-taught. And it's really hard for me to say, again, what I have such appreciation for music that I don't really know what I wouldn't listen to. Recently, like when I go for my runs, it's like Joe Satriani, Buckethead for the guitar stuff, some Steve Vai. Steve Vai was like it for me. I was obsessed with Steve Vai, man. I do electronica stuff like Above and Beyond a lot lately, Tiesto, because those guys do like this thing where it's like an hour long. I can get stuff done while it's going on. Back in the day, it was like all rap in high school. When I was wearing my armbands and jumping out the gym, it was a lot of rap, a lot of St. Louis rap, Lil Jon. Yeah, it's been everything, man. I think the only thing is really country, and even then, there's some country that I mess with. There was like this girl who sang the song. God, I wish I remember the name. It just came up, the algorithms, and it was really good. It was about like growing older. So it was so good. Anyway, I like the country songs that have a story to them, but otherwise, that's probably the least that I mess with. Country blues I can get down with, but just general country, a lot of that like pickup truck or whatever, but like, nah, not doing all that. But anyway, as I digress, out of my South Park voices, Nicholas says, hey Scott, I bought the PSA 10 Mario, Luigi, Pikachu full arts from you a little over a year ago, and I flashed them to some girls. That's an out of context statement, and all I got was, what is a PSA 10? Oh man, I have a taser. What gives is dating in a bubble. Thanks for all you do in the community. Thanks for the cards. Also, congrats on 15K. Dude, these memes are like so like triple layered memes. Next up, Jack Beat says, have you ever taken interest in Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh? Yes, I actually have some Magic videos. I hope people appreciate them. I know I do mostly Pokemon. I have some Magic videos that I'm going to put out eventually. I did like the Four Horsemen binders, and I just go through them. Keep in mind, I just like the art. I just like the history. I don't play the game. And I just give you my impression, like what I think about them. So yeah, I definitely do Magic, mostly vintage. Probably everything from Alpha. So I have everything, or I do Alpha. That's like a lifetime project. Four Horsemen. I like Urza Saga a lot. I thought about doing that because I grew up like during 7th edition, Nemesis, around there. So again, it reminds me of back in the day. But Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't mess with as much. Like, I don't know what it is. No offense to Yu-Gi-Oh! Collectors, because I know I have numerous in my Patreon. But, you know, I just don't have that, like, affinity towards it. And, again, I don't mean this to be offensive, but it doesn't have the diversity of art. Like, I feel like in Pokemon in one set, you can have such a variety, like CGI, hand-drawn, the little clay guys. Like, there's a huge variety in just, like, one set. Where, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like I can't tell sometimes. I'm like, what set is this from? But, again, like, it's just not something that I gravitate towards as much, but I still like appreciate like this, you know, the similar variables. Matt says, if you won the Art Academy contest, what Pokemon would you have drawn? Wow. Man, that's really tough. I'm still waiting for someone to win who's into Charizard and it's going to blow up. Kind of like the Mew. The Mew is very unique because it's popular, it's great art, and that person just drips them into the market. But if I did Art Academy, man, that's tough. I'd probably try to do probably a Blastoise Mewtwo, maybe a Squirtle or something. It'd be probably something like this. It might be reminiscent of this, like maybe a figure in there, like a human, and then some Pokemon interacting. I don't know. Yeah, that's a really good question. It'd probably be some of my favorites, like a Squirtle or Blastoise or Mewtwo. Yeah, that's probably what I'd be leaning towards. Patrick says, hey Scott, love what you do for the community and the knowledge you bring to the table in regards to quality information about the hobby. My question is, do you know what sealed product contained the Pop 5 series packs, as I've only ever seen them listed as single packs. Keep doing what you do. Congrats on 15K. So those aren't from a booster box. Those are given out usually they were given out at the organized tournaments. And that was it. You know, Pokemon just gave you these packs of 2 cards, and you get them typically as prizes at these tournaments back then. Pop 5 packs are very interesting because you can't weigh them. It's very interesting. Pretty much every other pack, main set packs, you can weigh them. Or Pop 5, we all know the deal. They have some of the most valuable gold stars for English, and you can't weigh them. And usually the ratio is like 1 to 40 is what people have done. Again, ballpark. I've probably done... I probably opened 200-ish in my time and experienced similar ratios. I'm not kidding you. One time I opened up 1 pack, Espeon Gold Star. I was like, God, I should have put this on camera. Should have done like this on camera, dropped the mic, be like, all right, there it is, guys, we're done. I'm not going to open the rest of these. But of course I was like, all right, well, maybe if I do a couple more, and I ended up opening like 20 more or 40 more or whatever it is. So I think the 1 to 40 is pretty accurate. But yeah, they weren't given out in a booster box. They were given out at tournaments for player prizes only. Ryan Polson says, do you know the location where first edition base box was released? Was it limited to just coastal cities as LA, Miami, New York, or did you get it released elsewhere? Yeah, I think it was mostly coast. That's what I've heard, not only anecdotally from collectors, but also from WotC employees as well. That's why you see so much on the West Coast. No surprise, because headquarters is way up there, Northwest. So naturally, California, all the cool guys getting it first. In the Midwest, I didn't see anything in stores besides Unlimited. Unlimited base was the only thing I saw in stores. I would see the occasional Shadowless card. To this day, I am not joking. When I see Shadowless card, my reaction every single time is like, oh my God, that's Shadowless. It could be a Shadowless Pidgey, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Shadowless. So, Shadowless was a big deal for me. I think Shadowless is more widespread, you know, because I would see some of them in my area. I know people in Australia, for example, they had Shadowless. You know, they had a decent chunk of Shadowless for some reason. Where first edition was mainly East Coast, West Coast. I know some people in Toronto, which is basically just like, you know, USA Light. They had, you know, first edition as well, but it's pretty much just on the coastlines, Wizards of the Coast for first edition base. Papa Frank God, so I recognize you from before. Hey Scott, Papa Frank God here. Congrats on 15K subs. Really simple question. Do you think vintage Pokemon will surpass its older brother Magic in price? Best regards. It's tough to say. Because there's different cards and different there's a lot different here between the two. In general, I think Pokemon already has to some degree. So if we look at like 2005, okay, 2006. Name me one card from Magic in 2006 that earns $5,000. Like one, just one. Because we got numerous in Pokemon. You know, if we go to like Rayquaza Gold Star, especially put on a 9, put on a 10. You know, you're talking 5 figures. I mean, Gold Stars alone, there's nothing like that in that era of Magic. So there's a lot more variety in Pokemon. And I'm not trying to like, you know, flex like, oh, Pokemon's better or something, but there's a lot more variety in Pokemon. And I think that variety is more robust overall than like Magic, I think, is really concentrated into vintage. You know, even for me, like a cross collector who wants to do sets just for art and history, I have a hard time convincing myself to even buy like a Fallen Empire set because it's just so easy. It's too saturated. There's no challenge. Like I don't want to buy, you know, a full set for like less than $100. That's not, you know, you're talking like basically under $1 each card. It's just not enough of a challenge, you know. And I'm not saying everything has to be alpha or bust because my favorite set actually so far to put together was Legends. That was a fantastic time. That was a great set. I love the art, love everything about it. But that's, I think, Magic's Achilles heel, is it doesn't have the variety, the long-term or long-range variety where Pokemon does. I mean, the thing people forget about Charizard, Shiny GX Charizard, okay? Yeah, it was a meme. The Black Label one ended at 10K, but the reality is someone bought it at $10,000. There's no new Magic card that anyone's buying anywhere near $10,000. So, therefore, I think Pokemon has that part covered. Where it doesn't is the average consumer income, I think, is higher, especially for vintage stuff. Someone in Discord made a comparison with me to Jim Brusso. Someone like Jim Brusso, for example, he's like twice my age. No offense to him, that dude is a legend. The dude is hilarious. Like, that guy's crazy. But anyway, the point is that you have like an older average age. A lot of these people are like, you know, knee deep into their careers. You know, not only that, the cards have transacted at a higher amount consistently. There's more money concentrated in that vintage era. So therefore, that part is, I think, elevated higher. But overall, stuff like Gold Stars, I think, outpace, you know, modern Magic. Basically, modern Pokemon, greater, you know, and then vintage Magic is greater. Okay, next up, what are some of your favorite lesser known, more affordable $0 to $100 Japanese promo cards? I've seen a ton of cool promos out there I've never knew existed scrolling through eBay. I just recently got back into collecting last year, started collecting base set when it came out in 1999. Could be a good question. Actually, this is a very good question because one of the video ideas I had is to say, okay, guys, here's what we can buy with $100. And I'm going to take like, you know, a modern booster box, a graded PSA 10 first edition base, like common card, you know, maybe an ungraded played Gold Star. And I'm just going to say, here are these options that you have right now as I'm making this video for $100. And I'll try to talk about, you know, the different aspects of them. And, you know, just put that information out there and people can buy whichever one they think they enjoy more. Or, you know, maybe that'll influence them to go search and look up other things they like. So, yeah, I think that's the price range of 0 to 100 really captures the majority of this hobby. People forget that at the end of the day. Most cards in this hobby are in the $0 to $100 price range. It's not an opinion. That's a provable fact. And that's where majority of these cards exist. So therefore, there's a lot out there. A lot that flies under the radar. I'd recommend getting on Bulbapedia. Unnumbered Japanese promos. I've looked at that link probably 10,000 times. Malcolm Gladwell, expert tier. I've looked at that thing so many times. So many times. So unnumbered promos is a great place to start on Bulbapedia. You can also go to like Sun and Moon promos, X and Y promos. There's so many cards in there. I would say like half of them are in this price range. So go through, find something you like, search. That's what I did. That's what keeps that collecting fire burning. It's really fun doing that. That's the exact same process, the exact same thing I did back in the day and still do to this day. Next up, Adel says, congrats on 15K. I always watch your videos for down-to-earth, rational, level-headed insight on collectibles. You're the best. Appreciate that. That's honestly, it does me a lot. Question, what investments do you have or could contribute to outside of collectible, if any? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Thanks. If that advantageous goal happens, I'll be retired in 10 years. I don't publicly discuss a lot of my other investments. What I can tell you is right now, a lot of my holdings are very conservative outside of collectibles because I don't like volatile markets. And when I say conservative, that can mean it's in a ETF. It's in there's a good one that is like they buy up bonds. Okay, when like states offer bonds, they buy it up. I don't know what it's called. One of the super big brain finance guys can help me out. That could be one of the options. Some might be in a high yield savings. It's a variety of things right now. But yeah, I don't talk about my full investments. Maybe if I'm one of these big blue check mark, Rudy type, where YouTube actually makes some like drop in the bucket of my income, I would talk about it more openly. But it's just there's no point in doing that. But no harm in asking. But anyway, yeah, I have a balance of speculative with collectibles and art, and then my conservative stuff is in a variety right now, and it's much more conservative because the market's volatile. And even if I don't make the margins or I miss out on some of the short-term gains, that's fine. I'd rather wait it out until this up and down just calms down a little bit more. I would prefer calm waters. So there you go. Hopefully that addresses it to an extent. Pierce says, "What's up, Pierce? Congrats on 15K subs. And are you a real YouTuber now?" Definitely don't feel like it. You must have made $1 million from all the rad revenue. Did you know that means you can retire? What a life. This is like rapid fire memes here. These are all like little inside jokes. What do you think of the monthly eBay sales volume from Pokemon PSA slabs going from 500K in April to $1.4 million in May? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you look at, actually, let's do the math real quick. Is that 90? No, that's not 90%. What is that? It's like 125 almost percent. So like that 90% eBay statistic on Pokemon cards, it makes sense. It's like pretty par for the course here. Yeah, I mean, I talked about in Patreon, like my sales in, where are we? In April. What year is it? Robin Williams meme. Yeah, in April were like record breaking. I mean, I'll tell people publicly, like my record day was $15,500 in one day, and I'm a margin seller. I'm not a high volume, like razor thin modern seller. So yeah, it was crazy, but I don't expect it to stay there at that forever. Also, I can't consistently sell the higher end product at that price. I can't keep getting it in priceless or in stock unless I pay more. So anyway, yeah, I think that it makes sense for what's happening. I mean, it's literally the data. And yeah, I would expect it to be somewhere in between those 2 points, probably by like the fall maybe. But who knows? We don't know. Maybe if the government the printer just keeps going and printing out all those checks. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, it's par for the course. Space says, "Hey, smpratte, I appreciate the knowledge you bring to Pokemon economics and true appreciation of Pokemon in general. I have 2 questions. Have you ever opened a PSA graded card and put in your binder? Also, are you a retro video game collector? If so, what is your favorite retro console and why? Congrats on 15K. Yeah, absolutely. I've opened up multiple cards. I actually have a stack over here that I need to crack for either selling ungraded or putting in a binder. Some of my Magic cards, I'll go to PWCC, check out some of the lower grades, 7 and under, perfect. That's what I want for my binder. A 7 is perfect for me. Actually, in Pokemon, 6 to 7, that is perfect binder condition. And there's a weird disconnect where like some cards, I remember I did this when I did my Neo Destiny set. Some cards will sit on eBay, like at a PSA 6 or 7, like under the played or light played price ungraded. It's crazy. So I'll just go buy that, crack it out, throw it in my binder. I've done it countless times. If anything, I've told people, I think the future of collectibles should just be everything is graded. And if you do want a binder, you want to put in your binder, just crack it out and put in your binder. Because at the end of the day, again, PSA is not perfect. Nobody is. No company ever will be. But I'd rather have a third-party opinion on something than like, even another. Not everybody I'm dealing with is like me, Gary, Rusty, whoever. So, someone, and they might not even be, ill-intended. They might just not know any better. And they might say, oh, this card's mint, and it's got like a crease run down the back. So I think an ideal scenario for me is everything's graded. And if you want your binder, just crack it out. So yeah, I do that for sure. As for video game collecting, you can see some of the Pokemon stuff here. I got Pokemon Stadium over there. Hey, you Pikachu over here. Actually, it's embarrassing. I have like, so above this, you can't see, I have like Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic 2, the Zeldas up there, up top. Why I said it's embarrassing is because sometimes I like just, there'll be like sealed Nintendo 64 games, like just like pushing aside when I'm doing videos. But yeah, like right there, Majora's Mask, Pokemon Snap. I grew up with Sega Genesis. That was my first one. Then Nintendo 64. So that's mainly what I do, just what I grew up with. But of course, being the from Ferguson lower income upbringing, we bought the bargain bin games. I bought Snowboard Kids 2. I actually have a picture on Instagram for my birthday, sealed. Definitely opened it up. Definitely wrote my name on the back in Sharpie. So because that's one I grew up with, Worms Armageddon, Micro Machines, I think Clay Fighter, Sculptor's Cut. Yeah, rest in peace. Like I'm like, oh, I just want to collect what I grew up with. Oh wait, these are like the most expensive games for Nintendo 64. So yeah, that's what I do mostly, Sega Genesis and then 64. I also do those like really like you talk like the what do you call it? Why can't I think of it all of a sudden? The Nintendo World Championship stuff, like those are exceptions, but yeah, most of it's just Genesis and N64. All right, guys, last but not least, and again, apologies I didn't answer your question. I can only do this pace for about an hour. Otherwise, I get lightheaded. I need to roll in an IV. It's not pretty. But last but not least here, Triple J says, how much do you estimate the value of your collection? And also, for how long have you been collecting Pokemon items? The valuation is probably, I mean, it's at least 7 figures. I don't know. I was thinking about this actually today when I was running. I never know what, I don't calculate the speculative side of like my value or net worth or collection, you know, because it could change. So I just say 7 figures, and yeah, that's a very conservative estimate. You know, is it like 2 million? Is it 5 million? I don't know, maybe somewhere in between. I really couldn't tell you. I'd have to go through every single thing. The problem is I have stuff in like numerous locations. Again, I don't keep anything valuable in my home. I'd have to really go through and detail everything, which I will eventually. But yeah, I would say 2 to 5 is probably what I'm looking at. And you know, time can change all that. Maybe it can go up, maybe go down. Who knows? Maybe I buy more, maybe I sell more. Who knows? But yeah, and as for how long I've done it, my first online purchase. So that's why I hesitated earlier when I said my first purchase, because my first online purchase was the Southern Island set, but I was buying stuff in person like 2006 when Dragon Frontiers was a new set. That's when I remember going to Target buying those blisters for like $15, like 3-pack blisters. Now they sell for like $400 or $300 or something. I would just buy those things, and like tying in that question earlier where people made fun of you. I remember I bought like 3 of them, and like a guy from work saw me like at the time when I was in school, and he saw me and was like, "Oh, Scotty, you buying Pokemon cards?" I like tried to play it off because it was like Christmas. I'm like, "Oh, I'm buying it for like my cousin or whatever." It's like, nah, man, I was definitely gonna go home and rip those open. So yeah, that's like my first purchases were like in person. So like I guess 06, somewhere in there, maybe 05, 06, and then first online purchase was the Southern Island in like early 07, I think. So there it is, guys. Hopefully this was useful. I love doing these long format videos. Again, apologies if I didn't answer your question. I wish I could just answer everybody's questions all the time. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time. You know, even with Patreon, it's getting crazy, and you know, I just have to prioritize the things that do pay me. But you know, this is an example of what I do every month at Patreon. If you are interested, it's just $10 a month. Everything $10 and above gets you access to it. So again, I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the support. I'm going to keep on keeping on. And hopefully this is useful, entertaining, something positive for you. And that is pretty much it, guys. Until next time.